Welcome back to the Off the Ball podcast. I'm your host, Clay Tillman, and on today's episode, we are going to be breaking down the Jets v. Steelers game from last night. The Steelers end up beating the Jets 37-15. Russell Wilson makes his return for the first time as a Steeler, and he performs as if he's playing for the Seahawks back in his prime. But before we hit the Steelers and dive into them and their success this season so far, let's hop into a Jets team that is so far 2-5, who is led by future Hall of Famer Aaron Rodgers, and they just picked up Davante Adams, but it seems like they're still in a slump. Let's hit the box score. Aaron Rodgers, 24 for 39, 276 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. We have seen a lot from this, from Aaron Rodgers this season, pick after pick, inconsistent after inconsistent. He has been that guy. In Green Bay, he was a very effective and consistent quarterback when it came to how many picks he threw. He would rarely throw over 10 picks in a season. But this year, it seems like he's doing it every single game, throwing at least 1 pick. And he just has not looked like himself this whole season, has not looked like the Aaron Rodgers we have seen in the last decade. I know he's 40 years old. He's getting ready to probably decide if he wants to retire or not. But going to a new team, especially with an offense like the Jets have, they have just been very disappointing. And a lot of that comes from the defense, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Also, Breece Hall was probably the star of this game. Unbelievable player, in my opinion. I think he's a great running back, but this man can also receive the ball. He had 12 carries, 38 yards, not many yards tonight, but he had a touchdown, but also he had 6 receptions for 103 yards receiving. Unbelievable. And multiple times in the game, a lot of his yards came from a lot of screen plays, and his ability to get down the field and his speed and efficiency and the way and how quick he is. He's able to drive down the field and get chunk plays after chunk play. We've seen this all season. We know who Breece Hall is. He's a future Pro Bowl, future star in this league. He did it great. Not really on the ground, but through the air, he did really, really well. Was able to break through defenders, was able to find holes, and was able to get chunk plays, which really helped the Jets even secure 15 of these points. One of them was from Breece Hall on the ground, but majority of their points really came to how dependent and how much they depend on Breece Hall getting them those yards. Tyler Conklin also had a receiving touchdown as well. But the big story is Davante Adams coming from the Raiders to the Jets, and questions. I said this in my last podcast when Davante Adams got traded. Will Davante Adams be the solution and solve the problems for the Jets? Excuse me. Well, he was very involved early in the game. Had a few receptions, but it ended in disappointment. He had 3 receptions for 30 yards. He was targeted 9 times, but only had 3 receptions for 30 yards. And for a caliber player like Davante Adams, you also have Garrett Wilson as your wide receiver too. Allen Lazard has had a fantastic season. He has been a touchdown machine so far through the season. But Davante Adams being that number 1 guy, their wide receiver 1, he just really underperformed. I don't know if it's a Rodgers problem. It could be that. I don't know if it's a Davante Adams problem where he's not getting open, but it's a problem when the Jets really wanted Davante Adams. They really thought this would be a breakout. This would allow them to potentially come back from being 2-4, now 2-5. They really thought Davante Adams would be that secret in getting them a fresh jump start. And it just really was a disappointment tonight, or not tonight, last night, offensively and defensively. The defense was just not there tonight. They had one sack the entire night. They're going up against a rusty Russell Wilson who has not played this season, came from the Broncos, didn't have a great tenure there, but comes back, and like I said just a few minutes ago, he really looked like the Russell Wilson we saw in Seattle. He threw for 264 yards, 2 touchdowns, had a rushing touchdown, and 0 turnovers. Man, he was able to get the ball through the air, great passes, and was able to get touchdowns and allow his team to succeed. And it really made Mike Tomlin look good, having Russell Wilson play, and the struggle in the Jets this season defensively. It really made Mike Tomlin look good. Justin Fields probably had the best start in his whole career as an NFL player. Starts 4-2. Russell Wilson isn't injured anymore. Comes in 4-2. Justin Fields gets sat, and you're coming in, man, Russell Wilson hasn't played in forever. Will he be able to do anything? Would he be able to do what Justin Fields has already done? And I said this in an earlier podcast a few weeks ago. What can Russell Wilson do that Justin Fields hasn't done yet? And Russell Wilson proved tonight that he can do a lot more than Justin Fields. And I'll get to that in a second. But defensively, the Jets just sucked. It just was terrible. 1 sack allowed a rusty Russell Wilson on a brand new team get 264 yards, 0 turnovers. It made their team look like a legitimate playoff contender. And it was just bad. Run game was non-existent in New York. They gave the ball 12 times to Breece Hall. Only had, 38 yards. It was just not consistent. And their play caller, Todd Downing, now I think he's a much better play caller than what Nat Hackett could have been. A horrible offensive coordinator in Nat Hackett. But Todd Downing, last week, he did really well. He had a great plan, ran the ball. Very good decisions by him. But in this game, he really focused on, he had a pass-heavy mindset. He really focused on getting the ball down the field. And it really didn't work. This Steelers team is packed full of pass rushers. TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. All these great defenders and who the Steelers have this season, it really just didn't work. And especially tonight, and their rookie Beanie Bishop Jr. had 2 picks against Rodgers. Rookie, like I said, had 2 picks against Rodgers, which really helped the Steelers not only get in really good field positions, but they converted on all of those interceptions from Bishop Jr. So successfully, the Steelers were good defensively and offensively. And this Jets team, who continues to dig themselves in a hole with Aaron Rodgers and his toxic and how toxic he is as a quarterback. He runs the show. He is basically their coach. He is the GM. I mean, heck, I said last game, the Packers, the Jets are looking like the Packers. I'm even confusing them right now. The Jets are looking like the Packers because they have 11 players who have transferred, who have been traded, who have signed, who wanted to play with Rodgers, coming to the Jets, and them just not doing much. Starting 2-5 so far, and we're about to get into Week 8. Luckily, they play the Patriots next weekend, so they have a lot of opportunities to potentially bounce back, but they're in such a hole right now where it's going to be very difficult for them to make a run through the playoffs or potentially even get into the playoffs. With Bills being their contender, with Bills being a contender, with Tua coming back hopefully in 1 to 2 weeks, it's going to be hard because obviously the Dolphins are a lot better than the Jets offensively and defensively. And Tua being the guy he is, I know he's concussion prone, but he's younger than Rodgers. He has better wide receiver core in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And then you move over to the Bills, Josh Allen having an MVP type of season. They just got Amari Cooper, who scored his first touchdown as a Bill. He's a great pickup from then. Keon Coleman, rookie. Khalil Shakir, great pickup. A great asset for them as well. The Bills are the Bills. They've been the Bills for years, and they've looked like a legit contender for a couple years. But now they look like a 100%, not just legit, but they look like a true sufficient team that will, in my opinion, make a huge run in this postseason. With Josh Allen having the season he's having, with 0 turnovers so far through Week 7, heading into Week 8, they're just looking like a perfect team. And it's going to be a very fun postseason. But back to the Jets. Yes, you have a hard division, a very hard division. Patriots, they're the worst team in the league. They're terrible. They have a lot to do in the offseason and for years to come. But the Jets, man, Rodgers' potential last year. You just picked up Devontae. You have Hassan Reddick. You have all these defenders, and you're just not performing well. A lot of hope has gone down the drain for this New York team, and it's been very sad. As a Packers fan myself, I want to see a guy like Aaron Rodgers succeed, but it's hard when nothing's even going on in New York. You're trying to get these players, you're trying to get all these offensive players, but there's always something different that happens each and every week. It's either offense or defense. So it's most likely a coaching problem. They're going to get a new coach, hopefully in the offseason, probably. So it seems like a big coaching problem from the Jet side. So they're literally just going to have to rebuild their entire staff and hope for the best. Maybe Rodgers will sign a new contract, but hope for the best that this team can potentially be a playoff contender with how good their offense is. I mean, you have Devontae, you have Garrett Wilson, you have Allen Lazard, you have Breece Hall. Goodness, you have a great team, but they're just not capitalizing. Defensively, they suck. Staff-wise, they're bad. Firing Robert Saleh, their best staff guy, it just doesn't equal out. They're not equally yoked whatsoever. Big problem in New York right now. It's just a slumpy and soggy season so far through Week 7. We'll see what they can do against the Patriots in Week 8. I have hope. I think they will win with how bad the Patriots are overall. But right now, they are just in such a deep hole where they're going to need a lot of help to get out. But Steelers, on the other hand, have been looking fantastic. And I want to hit on them and Russell Wilson in general. Let's move on to the box score for the Steelers. Russell Wilson, 16 for 29, 264 yards, 2 touchdowns. Also had 3 carries for 3 yards, 1 touchdown on the ground. Najee Harris, 21 carries, 102 yards, 1 touchdown. He did fantastic stuff last night. George Pickens. Finally, we're seeing George Pickens and his potential. 5 receptions, 111 yards, 1 touchdown, and Van Jefferson, 1 touchdown. Russell Wilson, I hit on this a little bit when I was talking about the Jets, but I want to hit on it more in detail. But Russell Wilson had a heck of a debut in Pittsburgh. Most passing yards in a debut for a quarterback in franchise history. The Steelers have had great quarterbacks in their franchise. You had Bradshaw, you had Roethlisberger. You now bring in Russell Wilson, who's a potential Hall of Famer one day. Debut becomes the number one guy, most passing yards in debut history for the franchise. Russell Wilson really started, you could definitely see his rust. He had some early faults. He had rush throws under pressure and balls hit the turf. But they were able to capitalize, like I said, on Bishop's 2 interceptions, turn them into 2 touchdowns. And this is what Justin Fields couldn't do. Like I said in an earlier podcast, I said, what can Russell Wilson do that Justin Fields hasn't done yet? Well, Justin Fields really couldn't turn the interceptions the Steelers defense got into conversions, into touchdowns. But Russell Wilson was able to do so. Also, Russell Wilson was able to make some really high passes, some lob throws into not only touchdowns, but completions. And this is something Justin Fields couldn't do either. He really couldn't turn long passes into completions and was very hesitant later in his tenure as the starter and even passing them. He really stuck to running and short passes. But Russell Wilson, on the other hand, is somebody that can pass far, has an arm, was very smart last night, but turned those interceptions into touchdowns, which really set them for a big win last night. And it now shows that, Russell Wilson is a great starter for the Steelers now. Justin Fields had a great start, 4-2. But now Russell Wilson coming in, a lot of questions in the air, especially in my head. Will Russell Wilson be that guy for the Steelers? So far, yes. He played a heck of a job against a Jets team who's struggling defensively, so I'm not going to give Russell Wilson all the credit yet. I'm not going to say that, the Steelers could be a heck of a team in the postseason, as the Steelers are the past few years, a 9-8 team, could potentially win 10 games a season, but normally a first-round exit. But it's a potential start to see, can this Steelers team seriously make a run in the postseason? Russell Wilson has won a Super Bowl, has been to 2 of them, an MVP. He knows what the postseason looks like, and the Steelers really haven't had a guy since Roethlisberger to be a quarterback that has had some experience in the playoffs. But now they do in Russell Wilson. So if they potentially can get in, you have the Ravens, who are probably a lock for that division to make the postseason. But then you have the Bengals and Browns, and the Bengals this season struggle defensively, but they're a heck of a team offensively. So it's either the Steelers or the Bengals can make a run. And then the Browns, Deshaun Watson, season-ending injury and with a Achilles injury. They're just done for the season. Not much hope in them. They're in for a rebuild, and they're probably going to draft a new quarterback. I don't see Deshaun Watson continuing his career as a Brown. But despite that, under Mike Tomlin, the Steelers are a playoff team. Mike Tomlin has had a winning record his whole career, and they are a playoff heavy team. Scratch that. They're not a playoff heavy team. They're a regular season heavy team, which gets them into the playoffs, but they're normally a first round exit. But Russell Wilson, on the other hand, experience, smart, athletic, can get out of the pocket, unlike Rodgers, can get out of the pocket, can throw, has an arm, like I said. he can do some stuff in the playoffs. We just have to see how consistent, how good this team can do through week 8 and so on. And they play the Giants next week or in their next game. And we know about the Giants. Daniel Jones is just not their guy. They paid him a heck of a lot of money, and he's just not capitalizing on that at all and not proving his worth for that team not much longer. You have Malik Nabers. The Giants are a good team offensively. I like Malik Nabers. I think he's a heck of a wide receiver. He's going to be something. He's already something, but he's going to be a generational talent moving on in his career. But the Giants, they just can't work with a guy like Daniel Jones. So I think the Steelers are going to win against the Giants as well. But overall, Steelers, great offense, great defense, and they have just been a very fun team to watch. And last night's game, Russell Wilson threw some great passes through the air that were almost lobs, that were pure and beautiful. One to George Pickens for a touchdown, another to Pat Freiermuth, their tight end. But beautiful catches, beautiful passes. They're looking like a solid team. I think they could potentially make a wild card. I think they will be a wild card team in the AFC this year. But on the other hand, Jets, like I've said, in a hole. There's going to have to be a lot of changes for them to get out. Like I said, I think they will beat the Patriots, but they did lose to the Broncos. So who the heck knows? They are in some trouble and some deep water. But that is the end of the podcast. It's kind of a short one, but I hope y'all enjoyed. Wednesday, NBA starts up tomorrow, Tuesday. Wednesday, we're going to start the NBA, the best time of the year. The NBA is back. I'm so excited to broadcast and podcast about the NBA. It's going to be a heck of a time on Wednesday, breaking down teams, potential award winners, all-stars, my favorites to win the finals. A lot of stuff is going to be talked about. It could be a long one because I can talk about the NBA for a long time. But I hope y'all enjoyed this podcast. If y'all did, make sure to follow, subscribe, share. Also follow my socials, Off the Ball Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever y'all call it. But hope y'all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time, Wednesday, on the Off the Ball Podcast. Have a good day.